I've come up with an analogy between traffic signals and punctuation marks so that you can understand their function more easily. Think of certain key punctuation marks as traffic signals that we follow when we drive. A period is like a red light. At a red light, you come to a full stop. Similarly, the period at the end of the sentence indicates the full stop of the sentence. For example, roaches check in, period. They don't check out. A semicolon is like a stop sign. At a stop sign, you stop, but the stop isn't as long as it is at a red light. You will see how the semicolon causes a brief stop within a full sentence. For example, roaches check in, semicolon. They don't check out. What happens when you're driving and you get to a yield sign? A comma is like a yield sign. At a yield sign, you slow down, but you don't come to a full stop. Similarly, a comma indicates a slowing down in a sentence, but not a full stop. For example, roaches check in, comma, but they don't check out. How do you know which punctuation mark to use? You were probably told in grade school or even high school to use a comma when you pause or take a breath. If that advice worked for you, it is only by coincidence because we breathe where punctuation occurs. You really have to understand basic sentence structure. Then you have to learn the rules. Okay, so let's look at basic sentence structure. Naturally, we have single words like punctuation, raining, rain, of. We could have a group of related words that are not a full sentence, meaning they don't contain a subject and a verb. This would be a phrase. By the way, a verb is the action in the sentence. A subject is who or what acts on the verb. Here are phrases: a sunny day, running with scissors, on the roof, while working on my project, is my best friend. You can also have a group of related words that contains a subject and a verb. This is called a clause. For example, I bought my new car. That's a clause. When I bought my new car. That's a clause. Let's find the subject and the verb in each example above. I bought my new car. The action is, of course, bought. Who or what bought? I. So I is the subject, bought is the verb. It has a subject and a verb. It's a clause. The second one, when I bought my new car. What's the action? Bought. Who or what bought? I. I subject, bought verb. When I bought my new car is a clause. Which leads us to the next thing that you need to understand, and this will become very important when learning to use punctuation. There are two types of clauses. There are independent clauses and dependent clauses. An independent clause has a subject and verb and no other subordinating word making the clause dependent. In other words, it has complete meaning. I bought my new car. A dependent clause has a subject and a verb and another word making the clause dependent. It needs to be connected to an independent clause to make a full sentence. When I bought my new car. When I bought my new car, what? The meaning is incomplete. So structurally, it's a clause because it has a subject, I, and verb, bought, but because it also has the word when, the meaning is dependent on completion with another independent clause. So now let's apply these terms and concepts to using punctuation correctly. A. Combining a dependent clause and an independent clause. The rule is when you combine a dependent clause and an independent clause, you use a comma if the dependent clause is first. When I bought my new car, comma, all my neighbors were envious. If the independent clause is first, do not use a comma. All my neighbors were envious when I bought my new car. The result is called a complex sentence no matter which pattern you use. Subordinating conjunctions begin dependent clauses. The following is a list of the most common subordinating conjunctions. B. Combining two independent clauses. The rule is, if you are using a coordinating conjunction to combine two independent clauses, the pattern is independent clause 1, comma, coordinating conjunction, independent clause 2, period. It was a hot day, comma, but I wore a jacket. Or, I will surely pass the test, comma, for I studied hard and am well prepared. The result is called a compound sentence. Here's another rule with independent clauses. If you were using a transition word to combine two independent clauses, the pattern is independent clause 1, semicolon, transition word, comma, independent clause 2. It was a hot day, semicolon. However, comma, I wore a jacket. Or, I studied hard for the test, semicolon. As a result, comma, I will surely pass it, period. A further rule is, if you are combining two independent clauses that are closely connected in meaning, you can often just use a semicolon. For example, the summer heat was unbearable, semicolon. Older people were fainting. In this case, the connection between the two independent clauses is clear. You do not need another coordinating word, and you just use a semicolon. The coordinating conjunctions are for, and, nor, but, or, yet, so. These make the acronym FANBOYS if it helps you to remember them this way. Here is a list of common conjunction adverbs, which are transition words. Please note, certain commonly used phrases like for example and for instance also fall into this category when they're being used to transition between ideas in two independent clauses. For example, I'd like to do extra work for my classes, semicolon. For example, comma, I not only read the assignments, but I also research any terms I'm not familiar with. One word of caution. You don't use a comma every time you have the word and. For example, I like fast food, for example, hamburgers and chicken nuggets. For our rule above, we're looking for an independent clause, a transition word or phrase, and a second independent clause. I like fast food. Subject I, verb like. We're okay, we have an independent clause. Let's look at the second. Hamburgers and chicken nuggets. Possibly hamburgers and chicken nuggets could be a subject, but where's the verb? Is there an action? No, there isn't. So hamburgers and chicken nuggets is not an independent clause. Hamburgers and chicken nuggets are just joined by the word and. Sometimes the word and joins simply words or phrases, but it doesn't mean that it needs a comma.